Hey, it's Matt from Custom Car Grills with a mesh install for the 2011 Toyota Tacoma. For 2005 through 10 Tacoma owners, please check out the video I have specific to those years linked in the description. To get this 2011 specific install started, I'll get out some masking tape. This will help protect the painted edge from any potential small scuffing while the inner area is being cut out. I'll be retaping this later, and I'm not trying to lay it in there perfectly along an edge or a side. To do cutting like this, I typically use an open-ended saw blade such as this one. One thing to keep in mind though is if it has a thumb screw like this. I always want to keep this screw on the inside of the grill so that it's not hitting the painted edge. When making the cuts, I like to stay about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge so that I don't cut into it. The excess remaining plastic can be sanded down later, so it's okay if there's a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch left. The cut through the big center bar is easy as long as I take the correct angle of approach. The bar is hollow and the saw blade can work through it easily and quickly. Once cuts are made all the way around the grill, then the centerpiece can be easily lifted out and can be thrown away. Next, I'll grab my rotary tool and equip Dremel's number 543 cutting and shaping wheel. What I want to do here is shave down the remnants of the connecting plastic pieces a little more flush using the top of the shaping wheel. I'm not really pushing them in so far that I cut into the plastic edge. I just want to get them almost flush with the edge. Having access to a grinder like this one will be a better tool to use when trying to work everything down and not worry about cutting the plastic too much. Either a cordless or air grinder can get the job done. I'm using a really aggressive 36 grit disc here and it's flying through the plastic with no problem. The corners were a little tight to get this tool in there without having to angle it forward some. When angling it though, again it's important not to cut into the plastic deeper than the normal edge height. To get super tight in the corner, I had to get my rotary tool out again and equip one of Dremel's sanding drums. I probably cut the factory mash a little too close to the center, so I've got a lot of material to sand down. It took a few minutes to sand down, but eventually the sanding drum got the job done. And here's a quick look at the cut and sanded down grill. Everything's looking good, and while the plastic is rough and there are some gaps, everything will work out in the end. The tape that was protecting the paint can be removed at this point. I'll be retaping other areas in just a moment, and when it comes time to paint the inner portion, I'll get a more accurate tape line in this area anyway. To trim the inner part of the grill, I don't want to look at the high points, and instead I'm going to be focusing on the lower points. It looks like there's a little over 1/2 of an inch to work with, and this should be plenty for the inner lip of the grill. So I'll grab some tape that's exactly 1/2 inch wide and draw out a cut line. Generally speaking, I'm getting the edge of the tape up to the edge of the inner portion of the grill like this. Doing this in a few tape segments is recommended because the tape is kind of difficult to wrap around corners cleanly. Here's how my edge looks. It's a good consistent depth, and the contrast of a brightly colored tape and black plastic will make for an easy line to cut along. To do the cutting, I'll use my rotary tool yet again, along with the cutting and shaping wheel. A good steady hand is essential in getting a clean cut. Some test cuts on scrap plastic might be a good idea if practice is needed before making cuts on the actual grill. Once I've trimmed the grill all the way around, then I'll remove the tape and check out my work. There's likely going to be burnt plastic bits from the cutting, and those can be picked off by hand. While working my way around, there's one obvious spot that will require more attention, and that is right here on the left and right edges. This is going to need to be filled and repaired for it to look right. To start the repair, I'll get some coarse grit sandpaper to clean and scuff the back of the grill near the gap we're working on. Also, a common point of failure on these grills is here on the lower edge. If the grill is broken, like mine is here, then it'll be a good idea to fix that too. Next, I'll spray on some adhesion promoter to make sure that we're getting a good bond for our repair. And to create a backing, I'll grab some aluminum tape to build up a barrier for me to work on. This is essential so that the repair material is contained and it doesn't spill through the front of the grill. As for the choice of repair materials, I personally like to use Valvoline's Plyo Grip Plastic Repair No. 3. Other products such as Smart Brand's Plastic Repair or 3M's Panel Bond works great too. Regardless of the repair material being used, dispense it in and around the area that needs filling. I'll try to build it up a little bit so that I can get the full thickness I need throughout the whole repair area. To spread any excess around, I'll grab a small brush and spread it around the sides to even it out. Like I mentioned before, if the bottom edge is busted, then it's best to repair it now. It's a tight spot to get the dispensing tube in, so it might need to be built up a little bit to make good contact. Once the repair material is in, spreading it around with a brush may help with getting some of the hard to reach areas. This stuff cures pretty quickly, and after a short time I was able to remove the tape barrier and reveal a fairly clean edge. It is a little bumpy, but that's a quick fix once I flip it around. I'll get the plyo grip out again and just dispense a little on the front of the edge like this. And once again, I'll grab a brush to evenly distribute the repair material around, and then I'll let it cure for a little while. While waiting for it to harden, I'll roughly tape the edges to protect against any scuffing that might happen while I get to sanding. I like to start with a 100 grit paper. If a sanding block is available, that can help with shaping this edge back to normal. If the tape barrier was done correctly, and if there wasn't too much repair material laid on the front of the grill, then there shouldn't be too much to sand. I was able to do this by hand, but if there's an excess buildup to sand through, then a cordless or air-powered sander will help quite a bit. Once I've got it sanded and contoured the best I can for now, then I'll trim off the excess behind the grill. The cutting and shaping wheel is a good bit to use for the job. And next I'll grab some finer grit sandpapers such as a 180 or 320 grit. I'd like to refine down these edges until they're smooth. Thankfully, there was no low spots on the top or bottom edges, and those were smoothed out quickly. Unfortunately, there were a couple small spots that I didn't get to fill in perfectly on these side repairs. Using some finishing putty should take care of those. I'll dispense a small amount of putty on a board and then add some hardener and start mixing it up. I only need a tiny amount, but I usually like to have too much than too little when doing this step. Before it starts to harden, I'll apply some with a spreader and then try and work it in the pinholes with a razor blade. Repeat this a couple times and then apply the remaining putty on the other areas that may need to be filled. After it's cured, then I'll sand it down again, starting with some coarse grit paper and then refining it until it's smooth. Once I'm done with that, then I'll take the tape off and clean this up a little bit. I think I finally got the inside edge cut, repaired, and sanded just right. The side area is looking much better than before. And now I'll tape this off one last time before painting. Covering the painted part of the grill shell is very important, as is getting the tape right up to the black plastic edge. I'll be taking my time to make sure that I get this done perfectly before moving on. Once I have it all taped off, then I'll grab some spray-on primer filler. And after I have it primed, then I'll let that dry before grabbing some spray-on flat black trim paint. Once it's all thoroughly painted, then the edge should look factory fresh as if the grill came this way. There's a whole lot of tape to remove, so I'll get working on this now. Using some sort of craft paper or at least some newspaper can help a lot with covering large areas, but it's always best to tape the seams so that no paint sneaks in there. Most owners are also looking to do the side triangle pieces, and I'll get to work on those by flipping this around. The 2011 side pieces are much thicker than the ones that I'd seen on the 2005 through 10 version. I first made a triangle cut that was well inside any area that will come close to the finished surface on the front, and then I'll pop that out. This will make it easier for the cutoff wheel to get in there. I'm staying about 1/8 of an inch or less up from the bottom and just working my way around. Periodically, I'll lift up or break off whatever plastic I can. quite honestly, this is a frustrating spot to work on, but it's important to stay focused. I don't want to stay in one spot too long and melt the plastic on an area that would be seen. Once I have the bulk of it off, then I can use the top of the shaping wheel to shave down any remaining remnants of plastic diamonds that were there. This will take a few passes at light pressure to get it to look right. It's also a good time to even out any high or low spots before moving forward. And then I'll grab an X-Acto blade to shave off any remaining burnt plastic bits. There may be some on the front, and any cut on the areas that may be seen need to be well executed. Let's turn this around and check out the work thus far. Everything's looking really good right now. All of the edges are a consistent depth and it's looking really clean. Now, let's take a look at the mesh piece that we have for sale on our website. This is pre-cut and pre-formed specifically for the 2011 model with all of the right cuts made in all the right spots. These bent tabs will wrap around the back of the opening and face the front of the grill. We also include a triangle piece for both the left and right sides. With the factory grill cut to that 1/2 inch depth, the mesh piece should go onto the back of the grill like so. Then I'll grab some cable ties and foam and get a temporary hold of the mesh and grill together. With the foam placed on the painted surface, the tail end of the tie can go through the mesh, and then the head can wrap around the grill and fasten together. I'll space these a few inches apart and work my way around the grill. In the case of the top and side edges, I had to combine multiple ties in order to get it to wrap around properly. I really like having the head of the tie resting on the back of the mesh. This seems to get the best hold of the mesh up to the grill. The sides are a little tricky to get tight and may require a few attempts to position them correctly. Once I've got all this tied together, then I'll grab some wire cutters and trim off the tail ends. Checking this out from the front, everything's looking good. The mesh is straight and tight up against the edge of the grill. I think I'm ready to get this bonded together. I've got a lot of plyo grip left over, and this is a great product to bond mesh to plastic, so I'll just use this as the bonding agent. Apply a decent sized bead around the perimeter of the grill like so. Be careful not to force too much through the front, because if any of that seeps through, it will be seen on the finished product. Once I've got some dispensed, then I'll spread any excess around with a brush before moving on. The bottom edge is easy to work on, but if there was no repair done in this area, then it may need to be built up a little bit. Just like before, I'll brush around what I can to even it out. The top edge is straightforward and is probably the easiest area to work on. Just build it up a little bit, and then work it around with a brush. Now I'll just wait for all of this to cure, and when I'm ready to move on, then I'll come back and cut off the ties and throw them away along with the foam. With the centerpiece all set, now it's time to work on the side pieces. Just like the centerpiece, the mesh goes on the back of the opening, but there's no bent edge on these. One tricky part of the sides is that I want to make sure that the horizontal slots are level with the main grill slots. I find that using a ruler can help with lining this up. It's also a good idea to check the alignment from the front, because this can really get out of whack when tilted a few degrees. Also, before the sides are installed, they may require just a little bit of forming to make sure that they're contouring properly. Each install will be a little bit different from the next, so some may require more forming than others. Next, I'll grab some more foam and ties and get working on firmly attaching the mesh to the grill frame. These may need some creative tie placement, but it looks like I got mine fairly flush here, so I'll grab some wire cutters and snip off the tail ends. Now I'll grab some plyo grip out again and start dispensing it right on the edge where the mesh and grill come in contact. These are small pieces and have a very small room for error. It's easy to spill some through the front, so be very careful when this is being placed. I'll just work myself all the way around the triangle, filling in some spots more than others depending on where the mesh placement is. A brush typically isn't needed, but sometimes it can come in handy if the plastic repair material needs to be spread around. Once it cures, then I'll cut the ties off and remove the foam. The grill is now ready to be reinstalled back on the truck. Let's flip this around and see how it turned out. Oh wow, this looks amazing! The main section is super clean and the sides are a great accent. This is good to go as is, but it can also be a clean slate for a retro Toyota emblem like this one. Despite it being an old emblem, it can really modernize the look of the truck. Another modern twist is a little TRD emblem in the lower driver corner, whether it be red or color matched. Also, let's not forget about a set of bold letters to give it that Raptor style look that's really popular right now. Whichever way we go, they all turn out looking great. Here's some installed pictures of the grill that was shown in this video. Well, that's all I got for this video. Like usual, I hope you liked it, and if you have any questions about it, then feel free to contact me. And thanks for watching.